ward because you all just tore it up and won it when I ran for mayor. So thank you. Thank you. And very appropriate that as I walk in, you're talking about the charter referendum, the referendum in the 49th ward and in some of the other wards. Very, very important. And I have to boast a little bit about this because I come from the 22nd Ward Independent Political Organization, the 22nd Ward being a charter-free zone in the city of Chicago. And I could give kudos to our alderman who has held steadfast on that principle and on the clarity pertaining to public education for all children, an equity agenda, and an understanding that we have a system in Chicago that is being taken apart, that is being privatized to the detriment of the children who need it the most. And of course, the underfunding of public education as well as health and human services in Illinois gets us to the crisis that we're in today in Illinois, in Chicago, and of course it sheds a whole lot of light for me in terms of why this election in November is so critical and so important. You know, I know it's a cliche because I always point it out to people when at Democratic gatherings like the convention, in campaign ads, people talk about this is the most important election of your lifetime, right? I'll leave it at that because I want to come back to it because for some of us, we really do believe that this one is really critical. But before I talk about it, I want to talk a little bit about what an exciting year this has been over the past almost now year and a half because of what Bernie Sanders has done to American politics. And I have to tell you, people think that because we didn't defeat Rahm Emanuel last year in the runoff election in April, that somehow I may be feeling kind of dejected and, you know, maybe pissed off, depressed, and nothing could be further than the truth. I have to tell you, I feel fantastic. I feel young, as a matter of fact. I even have some acne that I don't know where the hell it came from the last few days, but I'm feeling great. And part of part of my reason for feeling so great is, in spite of the challenges that we're facing nationally with this crazy election and the polling, if it's correct that this is a dead heat of an election for the presidency, I have the greatest optimism that what has been unleashed by the Bernie Sanders campaign will continue to be powerful and transformative of American politics as we move forward, and that transformative power continues in Chicago, in cities across the nation, and will continue to be a force to be reckoned with as we move forward in future electoral cycles. Why do I say that? Because the Sanders campaign paved a new path that says we can do grassroots politics without the big money in politics, and yes, not relying on billionaires and millionaires and wealthy people and wealthy interests to control our politics. Because if they control our politics and our elections, they control the legislative agenda, and that is a setback for ordinary people across this country, whether it's a city hall or a village hall or state legislatures or the federal Congress. And that's what's significant about this electoral campaign and the Bernie Sanders factor. I got a chance to campaign in Iowa, in Nevada, in Arizona, in California, even out in the East Coast. And I got a chance to see what that was all all about. And I got to tell you, I think the reason I'm feeling so optimistic about things is I saw the next generation of elected officials, the next generation of activists, the next generation of the people who are going to run people's campaigns and lead agendas and lead on issues that I didn't expect I'd be around to see, to be quite frank with you. And I am inspired, I am moved and motivated to continue struggling for people power politics more so today than even at the '84 convention of the Democratic Party or the '88 convention when I was a Jesse Jackson delegate, or a couple of the others that weren't as interesting. Why? Yes. Why? Because I'm not a regular Democrat in the first place, but because that campaign had a tremendous impact on the Democratic platform. Take some time and read it. It is the most progressive platform in the history of the Democratic Party, and we have an instrument now to be used as we elect a new president and as we take back at least the Senate to guide us in our efforts to keep big money out of politics, hold elected officials accountable, whether it's Hillary Clinton, whether it's the members of the new Senate, the new people that we elect to the House of Representatives. It is the way forward, and I've never been as enthusiastic about these things as I am today. And remember that it's not over. We have a new vehicle to keep influencing politics, to pave the way forward for progressive politics, because there is our revolution. So it didn't end with an election, it didn't end with a political convention. It's there for us to take over, for us to lead with, to chart new paths and new ways, and most importantly, to bring in new activists and new political leaders into the realm of what has been politics and to make it transformative. The second piece that's out there is Bernie's brand new Congress movement. It is another tool to ensure that after we take back the Senate in November, that we come back and in 2 years win a majority in the House of Representatives, so that we have two chambers that can support a progressive agenda to take things back and to continue the thrust and the essence of what represented the Bernie Sanders campaign. So I am very, very excited about those things. Let me just say a couple of things about the importance of the November election for me. One, I can't believe that this is a dead heat race. And I want to talk about, which poll is right and which one may be wrong, et cetera, et cetera. I do know one thing, and it's something that people in my community feel, and that is that Donald Trump has stoked the flames of some of the worst instincts, fears, and misguided thinking about our country. He has capitalized on the fear, the distortions, and the idea that someone as extreme as he can magically solve the problems that our country faces with the worst approaches to doing that. Not in a democratic manner, not through engaging people, not by bringing people together to get to know each other, to understand each other, to build tolerance, embracing, recognizing that the future of the country really depends on our ability to embrace people and to include and integrate people into what can be a greater country than it has been in the past, by utilizing all of the assets of all the people in this country. And I got to tell you, it's scary. The talk about the wall, the talk about banning Muslims from coming to this country, the talk about law and order just evokes all of the memories of the Barry Goldwater campaign, the George Wallace's appeal to racism, the Ronald Reagan divisiveness, to all the things that seek to move us backward and become a country that's divided, that is polarized, and one that really cannot embrace all of its people. That, for me, is what's on the line this November. And that's why it is so critical that we build the broadest unity possible, that we engage as many people as possible, especially first-time voters who were brought into the process by the Bernie Sanders phenomenon and the revolution that he talked about, that's rooted in recognizing the diversity, that understands that we can only move forward and have significant politics where ordinary people matter if we take the money out of the equation, and where we purge the Congress of the institutional corruption that the big money and the entrenched interests hold over Washington politics and policies. That is what is transformative, and that's the message that I think we've got to get out to all the young people, so that they don't abstain, so that they continue to participate and show them the path forward that's possible with the invigorating energy and enthusiasm and intellect and abilities, like the ability to communicate on social media, the ability to raise the great amounts of money that were generated through small donors over the past year is just unprecedented in American politics. They've got to see that they are the future of this American revolution in politics, and that is what will make our country better. So I want to just point out a couple other things. It is very, very sickening to me that the Fraternal Order of Police would come out and endorse Donald Trump. What about the Constitution? Right. What about civil liberties? What about respecting due process? What about the idea that someone is innocent till they're proven guilty? Today, he issues a statement that if he's elected, he will bring stop and frisk to cities everywhere across our country. The federal court struck down stop and frisk. It's all over. It's the essence of the ACLU report that was issued within the last year and a half in Chicago about the preponderance of racial profiling, particularly as it relates to people of color being stopped by the police. And if they have a green flag, a green light to do this, it will only worsen in suburban communities where a lot of the demographic change and growth of minorities, Latinos, African Americans, and Muslims has occurred over the past decade or 2 decades in the metro area of Chicago. So that is really, really scary to a lot of people, and it should be scary to anyone who cares about the Constitution. Those are some of the greatest concerns that people in the Latino community have, the immigrant community have. Obviously, the Muslim community is very fearful that that type of rhetoric will only incite violence, racism, and more discrimination. It's just divisive. It's not the way to go. And what kind of policy conversations do you get from the Donald? Not a whole lot. With respect to Hillary Clinton, I'm not the biggest fan. I've never been a cheerleader of either Clinton, even though I voted for Bill a couple of times, just because I thought that it was the better alternative. But it is quite significant that the Sanders campaign had a great impact on her positions. Coming out against the TPP, very, very significant. Taking stronger positions against fracking, talking about climate change, talking about racial justice in this country, addressing the issues that have been brought to the forefront by Black Lives Matter, by the Black Youth Project 100, and some of the other activists that have emerged during this very tumultuous time in our country is very, very significant, and that is why the election in November is so, so important. And if you think that there isn't a threat and a danger in Donald Trump being able to appoint 1, 2, or 3 members of the Supreme Court, I beg you, think it through. Consider it. And the implications and ramifications of what can happen should that bizarre scenario come to be a reality. All of us will have great, what's the word?
Nightmares.
Regrets, nightmares about it. So what does all of that have to do with the crisis in Chicago and Illinois? It has everything to do with it. Because what Donald Trump represents at the national level, Bruce Rauner and Rahm Emanuel represent in Illinois and Chicago. Let's be clear. The most important reason why we have the perfect storm in Chicago with respect to the levels of violence, with the crisis in the criminal justice system, hopefully, but for the new state's attorney that will be sworn in December, thanks to the movement that was out there, to a campaign, to the young people, I think that made a significant difference, and of course to the great multiracial, multi-ethnic coalition that Kim Foxx put together. But the reason that we're in this predicament is decades of neglect, disinvestment, and structural racism. We've known for decades where the poverty in Chicago is located, and all we've done is continue to concentrate. Sometimes we displace people and we move them to other parts of the city or other parts of the county that's designated for poor people or people of color. We just relocate them and reconcentrate the poverty. We need to make national changes so that we have a shot, and Hillary Clinton has committed to this, and it was Bernie who championed it. We need a massive infrastructure bill that can put millions of people to work quickly across the country, especially in metropolitan areas. Metropolitan areas is the new urban agenda that we went to San Francisco with, Katie, in 1984. It's what Jesse Jackson championed in 1988. I think more of the country has now come to understand why we need an infrastructure bill. Because we need to put large numbers of people to work. We need to build the skills of people who have been out of the work life and the work experience, sometimes for a couple or 3 generations. And we need to impact those people like we have not done so since the Great Depression. This is an important moment for the country. More people are understanding the urgency of this, and it's not just to put black men back to work. There are people in a difficult position all over this country, and it's shameful that we have cities that we've abandoned and neglected, like Detroit. We cannot afford to have any more Detroits. This would be an important and significant investment in the well-being of people all over our country. That's what's on the line. In Illinois, we will not be able to overcome the structural deficit that exists with respect to the funding of the basic things that any civilized society values. Care for our children and their well-being, care for our public school system, and care for a decent health and human services system. Under a Rauner administration, and those who think like Rauner, and those who represent the interests of the millionaires and the billionaires, will never have a system of fairness in taxation in Illinois, and will never overcome the structural deficit that we have to become a society that offers equity and opportunity for all of its people. And what's the other link to the Rauner challenge in Springfield? It is Rahm Emanuel. Not so much the person of Rahm Emanuel, but what he represents. Why did Rahm Emanuel win? $30 million. Plus all the backup from the editorial boards and media outlets and all of the power structure, the machinery in the city. and of course, doling out $5 million here and $3 million there to keep a lid on things as we've come to learn. And I want to talk a little bit about that because I am more optimistic and hopeful about Chicago politics today even than a year ago, okay, or a year and a half ago. Look at what's been achieved. We had the first runoff in the city's history, mayoral runoff, 18 runoffs across the city of Chicago. Okay? And then we had the transformative, shocking moment of the Laquan McDonald video and its impact on people across race, across ethnicity, across neighborhoods in the city of Chicago. Chicago is different from what it was just a year and a half ago. There is, of course, great buyer's remorse, people who felt that they didn't know more than what they knew at that time. We know that. But at the same time, look at how the ground has shifted politically. Bernie Sanders is a great reason why that's occurred. In several wards on the north side, we saw opposition committeemen beat sitting aldermen or committeemen.
Yes.
It happened in the 38th and the 39th wards. We almost had a different committeeman even in the first ward, someone who, tries to play it pretty cool, missed, losing his seat by less than 150 votes. On the south side, we made history. We elected the first Asian American state representative in Illinois history.
Teresa.
Okay? Yes, Teresa Mock. People woke up. Politicians, some members of the council, other state legislators are really, really worried about what can happen the next electoral cycle. And this is where Network 49 comes in. Just like we're making plans on the southwest side to elect new leaders to the city council in 19, new leaders to the Illinois General Assembly, both houses of the General Assembly, and as we're looking at other political boundaries and districts and coalition building across neighborhood, across legislative lines, across race and ethnicity, the whole city ought to be thinking that way. Bernie Sanders and the movement of all of the Sanderistas has woken a lot of people up. I know that we've got an even better shot at winning a majority in the city council in 2019 if we continue with our work on the ground, if we continue talking about the importance of a small donors ordinance that the city council should enact, that should at least be a 4-to-1 ratio, if not a 6-to-1 or 7-to-1 ratio. That's what will force elected officials to do the right thing. And if they don't do the right thing, we can replace them. We can fire them and replace them with people who want to do the people's business and the people's agenda. I tell you, some of the big powerful families that have enjoyed a dominance in politics in Chicago and Illinois are very worried about the future because Bernie Sanders came to achieve 46% of the vote, and they were pulling for the other candidate. Okay? That's very concerning because it shows that the influence that the machine forces have had on ordinary people is waning, and it's waning rapidly. People are looking for new ways to do politics. They like the straight talk that they got from Bernie Sanders, and they now understand that it's been the big money and the special interests that have kept them from having more effective and loyal representatives in the city council, in the state legislature, on the Cook County Board of Commissioners, and of course in Congress. And Congress is probably the worst example of it all. So I come here tonight just buoyed, as they say, by all that I have seen and witnessed over the past year and a half. There are young people who are excited about politics, young people who are inclined to do the right thing, young people who care about climate change, young people who care about multiracial unity and overcoming the barriers that have kept us apart for so long in the city of Chicago and in cities all over this country. The future is bright. We've got to continue. What you're doing here, people are doing on the South Side. Example, there's a new 12th Ward Independent Political Organization. There's a new 15th Ward Independent Political Organization, and that will continue to spread. This is empowerment. This is a great moment in the city's history. We should not be blind about the achievements that we have made. Local politics today is more closely tied to national politics. Let us seize the time, continue the progress that we've made, and show the path forward by being united the way you united when I ran for mayor here a year and a half ago, and we demonstrated that when people come together and put aside their differences, there is true people power, and that's how we move things forward. Thank you very much.